Hello, happy Friday. It's Jack Maxwell. Welcome to the High Road, or the High Road Q&A Live. Let's call it that, because at the top of the hour, we have episode 9, a mini segment of the High Road itself. I know that gets confusing, and here's why. We're releasing mini segments of this television show, or it was scheduled to be, but because of the virus, we decided to bring it to you sooner than later. So we're chopping it up into mini segments and putting it on YouTube. This is, as I said, week 9. But I realized there was so much interest in CBD and medicinal THC, or at least curiosity, that I wanted to be there for you to answer your questions as well as I could, because I had quite the experience with that. As you might know, I hosted a show called Booze Traveler on Travel Channel. I had to leave that show and go into chemo because I had non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, and went through chemo, and through those two things had a few issues, let's say. And because of that, I saw a pain specialist who recommended medicinal CBD and THC, and it actually worked. It wasn't my thing before. I was not a recreational user. I don't care if you were. It's okay. I have absolutely no judgment on that whatsoever. It just wasn't for me. Are you a fan of golf? Maybe you are. Maybe it's not for you. It was as simple as that. Well, it had roots in my father being a drug addict, and I thought I might have some kind of genetic predisposition towards that. So I stayed away from that just in case, because I was the only man of the family. It was my sister, my mother, my grandmother, my great-grandmother. So I wanted to be a good kid for my mom. So that being said, if you get some relief from CBD or THC at all, or tried it, or are curious, I'd like to hear from you. You can punch in a question and we'll try to get to it, or a comment, whatever you'd like to do. But the show itself starts at the top of the hour, followed by one of my favorite interviews. It's so fun. There's a guy who's an actor who you would know, who's a friend of mine. His name is Bill Smitrovich. And this is him in Ted. You remember that scene? One of the funniest scenes in a very funny movie. He was also in Ted, too. You might know him from this series he did right here called Life Goes On. Remember that, with the great Patti LuPone and Chris Burke, who played Corky. And I don't have to tell you about that show. If you watched it, I'm sure it resonated with you. Anyway, he is a guy who's been using cannabis since the early days, like the 60s, when it was illegal. And that's him with Seth MacFarlane, who, of course, created Ted and Family Guy and American Dad and so many other things, and does great voices as well. And I'm envious, because I love those shows, but I really can't do those voices. Well, with my friends, I do. I do a little bit of Stewie, but mostly Herbert, which I will not do for you now, because Herbert's kind of creepy. In any event, if you watch Family Guy, you know how brilliant it is. Moving back to Bill Smitrovich. He's been a cannabis user from the 60s, but mostly back in the day for recreational purposes, I would suppose. But now he knows, being a man of a certain age, that there are a lot of benefits that he gets from medicinal THC and CBD, not the least of which is creativity. I know there is some, let's say, controversy about marijuana, or cannabis, as they call it now, rightfully so, and its effect on your creativity. I just got done watching this fascinating documentary about psychedelics. Have a Good Trip, it was called. Sting, Ben Stiller, Sarah Silverman, and others, and their experience with psychedelics. I think the future is microdosing psychedelics, because it's been known to help PTSD, stress, anxiety, trauma, nervousness, not being able to sleep, all of these things. I think cannabis gives us the same thing. From all the people I've spoken with, they have received some kind of benefit. Some, very few, say they don't feel anything at all. And that's because of the amount of cannabinoid receptors in their particular body, I suppose. We all have different amounts, so it affects us all differently. But now with medical grade cannabis, CBD, and THC. You can pick a particular strain. You can pick a ratio. You can have indica, sativa, a hybrid. It's way more advanced than it was even 5 years ago, never mind 20 or 30. So we're going to talk to him, and he's going to tell us what it does for him medicinally and creatively. And we're going to go over his career. I'm not going to give you his credits now, but he's done a ton of things. If you know his face, then you know you've seen him in more than one thing for sure, because he's a very successful working actor. And the reason I dress like this, well, it is Arizona and it's kind of hot, but it's freezing in here. I like to keep it cold. I know this is a bit of a Sonny Crockett redo, but there's a reason for that. And we'll tell you during that interview with Bill Smedrovich. But as I always say, this is your time. I am neither an advocate for cannabis nor am I against it. I think it's a very personal decision. If you get anything from it whatsoever, good for you. Like I said, I was not a recreational user, but medicinally, I found it helped me with pain, specifically neuropathy, which is nerve pain due to chemo. Let's get to your questions and comments. Christine, you're the best, Jack Maxwell. Oh, that didn't have to be the first comment. Ken is my producer, and well, he knows that we had to put down a dog today, who I grew very close to, and unfortunately, it was this lovely dog's time, and but their life was made better toward the end with CBD. A friend of mine, we have a mutual friend whose dog was passing a couple of years ago on death's door, and CBD helped this dog. We're going to show you in the next couple of weeks. I believe the episode is coming up, what CBD has done for pets. It's amazing. So that's why my friend Ken, the producer, put that up. Thank you for that, Ken. I appreciate the kind comment. Michelle Martin, hi, Jack. My dad is neuropathy and he used CBD cream or CDB cream. I think that's just a typo, unless there's something I haven't heard of, perhaps. Well, thank you for sharing that. And if you have personal experiences, please let me know. Like I said, I'm not here just to say it's the greatest thing ever. It's certainly not. But as I've said before, for what it was known as and how it was so demonized, with what we know now, it's really a travesty that we didn't do research on it and that we didn't have access to it, because it's helping so many people through so many things. Mick McGrath, what is the difference between indica and sativa? Well, as people who use it a lot would say, indica, the nickname for that, or I guess, would you call it a nickname? Indicouch, because it generally, not always, relaxes you. Sativa does the opposite. Although it doesn't give you a huge bump, it just doesn't make you tired. Most people I've spoken to recently prefer a hybrid, because they don't want that one way or the other, especially if they're using it medicinally, as you might imagine. Whatever affliction they have or symptoms from that, they want to treat that. They don't want to be, quote, in the couch or hyped up. But I know people who are fans of both indica and sativa. So it's up to you. So let me know. What is it? Do you use indica? Do you use sativa? Do you use a hybrid? Great evening, Renee Harrison. Thank you. What is that? A mosquito? Or what? No, what is that? We used to call them sewing needles when we were kids. Dragonfly. That's what it is. Interesting. Hi, Jack, says Carrie. Hi. How are you, Carrie? How are things? You know, this is such a fun show for me to do. And I'll tell you why. It came out of the blue. I was doing this show that celebrated drinks and culture and people around the world. One day I went in for a heart exam. And thanks to my stepbrother, who suggested that I do because I'm old, in his words. And they found a little blip at the bottom of the screen. They said, you have to come back in. I came the next day, and they took a whole scan of the whole cavity from neck down, neck to waist. And they found a lot of activity. And they suspected it was some kind of lymphoma because my lymph nodes were on fire, to quote my doctor. So because of that, we had to do a biopsy. I went onto the table a few days later, and they put a hole in my back and pulled out a lymph node and tested it. And the doctor said with 99.99% assurity, it is non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. And I didn't know which one to root for, of course, because, I got mixed messages. Somebody told me, oh, you want Hodgkin's. Trust me, you want Hodgkin's. Non-Hodgkin's is terrible. And other people said the opposite. So I didn't know what I was rooting for. I tell you what I was rooting for. I was rooting for no cancer, but that didn't look that didn't look like it was doable. So they told me non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. I went back to do Booze Traveler because it's a very slow growing thing and slow moving, and it doesn't affect you all that much unless you're having symptoms. And I was not, just luckily, I suppose. Maybe I was pickled from all the drinks I had on the show. If you saw it, you know what I'm talking about. In the meantime, I took a lot of scans, and in any event, when it got worse, I went into chemo. Couldn't do the show anymore, of course. And through that, I learned that there are a lot of side effects to chemo, a lot of pain in the ass stuff. Renee Harrison says, I prefer sativa and hybrid. Florida medical legal. Oh, that's good. Happy to hear that. I hope more states do that. Only for people who need it. Why not? And if you don't need it and you want it, so what? Why shouldn't you have it? Are you telling me other things are better? I don't know. Amy Hull. Hey, Jack. Enjoying a chocolate rum chata milkshake. Oh, yes. That's my friend who likes to have a cocktail or two, which is wonderful. You know, she's been with us from the early days. And I remember Amy Hull, a sidebar story here real quick before I get to the main thrust of this show. We had a snake on the show, and I don't know, I think the locals put a pin in its neck to get blood to make it drink. And Herp Mom was her, maybe still might be her social media handle, because she loved all things snakes, turtles, everything that fits under that. I don't know what else does, but she was concerned that we were mistreating snakes, and I never would personally. I love animals. This was very difficult for me today to do the show after having to put down this lovely Yorkie, Coco. In any event, I know you've probably had to go through similar things, if not an animal, a loved one. But I got to say, her life was made better by this CBD. So there you go. It ties into the show. Lynn Zepp, I just started a 1-to-1 topical cream for arthritis and back pain. I'll let you know next time. Thank you, Lynn. You do that. And just in case you don't know, 1-to-1 is the ratio, which means equal parts CBD and THC. Now, a lot of people don't want to do THC. They might fail a drug test, they believe, or it has the psychoactive ingredient. They don't want to get, quote, end quote, high, but they want the benefits of CBD. And they want whole leaf therapy, so they use a ratio, and there are a lot of ratios: 1-to-1, 2-to-1, 5-to-1, 10-to-1, depending. And this is the beautiful thing about cannabis. And again, I'm not here to tell you to use it, but it's great now because now, when as it becomes more regulated and more consistent, the quality of the product, and as someone comes to the forefront and says, we're the one you can trust. We're the ones you can depend on. Our stuff is good and consistent, and it's gonna be good for you. You're gonna like it. You're gonna like what it does. Then we will trust those companies and start using it, whether it's 1-to-1 or 10-to-1 or whatever, because different ratios and different strains for different things. Keep that in mind. It's not what it used to be, where you just smoke a joint or a bong or something. Shane, we need it to be federally legal. Amen, brother. I agree. I'm military, and they just give us water and ibuprofen for pain. Sure. You know, I had a guy on, Al Harrington, played in the NBA and over in China for a total of 16 to 17 years. And he said something so brilliant. He said, look, we're Ferraris. You pay us a lot of money to do what we do. Would you rather us just, you want to go out drinking to calm down for the night? Is that what you want? Do you want us to, you want to give us all these ibuprofens and Advils and Aleve, all these aspirins and things like that, as I try to adjust a little bit of light here? No, you'd rather give us a gummy because it doesn't have the side effect, doesn't have the hangover, it doesn't affect us. Just from a financial point of view, you'd think it would be a better choice. So you can go back and see that episode if you want. Thank you for that comment, Shane. I hope they turn it around and at least give you CBD, of course, if not the psychoactive, because you're in the military. But CBD has been proven to be helpful. Julie Kemple It's hard to lose a friend, whether they have two legs or four. Thank you, Julie. That's true. That's very true. So, if you've been watching, yes, it was the video. We'll have another one just to say goodbye. But in any event, listen, it's not about that or my loss or a dog or anything like that. This is about a journey and our journey together through CBD and medicinal cannabis. When I set out to do the high road in conjunction with my friends at Vertical, we wanted to talk to people who generally were not pro already, because what's the point in that? Yes, there were some who were, and there were businesses that have supported it for a long time, and users have been using it for a while, and that's okay. But for people to have an almost religious experience, for them to do a 180 on something takes quite a bit. And on this show, you will see many people who would never have used it under any circumstances until a trusted friend or a medical professional said, you should probably try this, or maybe think about trying this because it's probably better for you than other things. You've heard me rant many times against the dangers of opiates. I have a friend, and he lost his nephew, and my other friend, his brother, lost a son to opiates not even a year ago. And he was not a drug addict. We don't even know if he knew what he was taking, but it's a very painful experience for the family and for me. So I can't imagine what the family went through and is still going through. Opiates have their place, but it's so easy to accidentally overdose, which is what he did. And we don't want that to happen. If you can take cannabis instead of opiates, please think about it. Anyway, just think about it. In the meantime, I'll keep trying to educate you. Frank B says, Jack, what do you medicate with? Anything specific? RSO, which is Rick Simpson oil, for those who don't know, tinctures, specific strains, etc. Well, Frank, thankfully, most of my neuropathy is gone. I've never experienced high anxiety or nervousness to any extent, some inflammation, some pain. So I take a tincture of CBD and sometimes combination ratio, of course, CBD and medicinal THC. I cannot advocate for any particular brand. I would not do that. Just like on Booze Traveler, we never took alcohol money. I know some shows do, and I don't mean alcohol shows. I just mean shows in general. And that's okay. Look, you watch commercials in between shows, even the Super Bowl, right? Because it supports that particular program. But we never did that on Booze Traveler. The commercials were separate. I had nothing to do with them. But every time I was approached to be a sponsor of an alcohol or liquor or a place that made it, we politely and hopefully graciously turned that down, because I wanted you to know you were having, and I was having, a true experience that I was bringing. It doesn't make me a martyr or anything like that. It just means this was something that I chose personally to do. Same with this. There's nobody that comes in and says, use this product. Can you put it on your show? We will pay you to put this particular product on your show if you speak well of it. I wouldn't do that, because then you couldn't trust me anymore. Listen, the reality is television shows, YouTube shows, podcasts, most of which are sponsored, right? That you watch, you enjoy. Okay, so this was put together by a company that wanted to bring information to the masses. That's it. So we've talked about them before, but this is not a commercial for them or an infomercial for them or any particular product. So I can't say, I just said Rick Simpson oil and there are other things, and Tommy Chong has a brand and other people have brands, and Al Harrington, who was a guest, has a brand. All these people, I get it. But you should find what's best for you, just like the ratio as well, whether it's the strain, any of it, the amount. I've heard a lot of people using weed. Wow, old school term kind of. For pain, sleep, nausea, etc. Is anyone doing research on it? For mental illness and or depression, rather than things like Prozac or lithium? I'm sure they are. As you know, there are many people, and if you read the news, you'll see many people in Congress are talking about possible microdosing of psychedelics and how it's helped our veterans. I mean, I had a veteran on, as you know, you've seen the show before, who got off opiates and he was suicidal and onto cannabis. And it's a tragedy. 22 members of the military a day killed themselves, veterans, or something to that effect. And he thinks it's more because of underreporting. And, you know, I think we should take care of our veterans. I'm not pro-war. I don't know anybody who is. But as they say, only the dead have seen the end of war. So it's going to be in our lifetimes forever, I'm sure, in one form or another. And we got to take care of those people who risk their lives and leave parts of themselves on foreign soil. And we should never attack our veterans. You know, it's been in the news lately this week, and I'll only refer to it on the edges, but it's a horrible thing. Somebody attacked a veteran and said this particular veteran hated America and was a treasonous traitor and all these other things. I'm not quoting specifically, but it's a horrible thing because they had different politics. It's not right. Anyone gets hurt overseas or anywhere, protecting our company, our country, our liberties, our freedoms, should be held up and praised and taken care of when they come back. So I don't know about mental illness. I know they're experimenting. I'm sure they are. I know they're experimenting with it with PTSD and trauma. And can't imagine what that's like, war, and then come back and try to live with the horrors of war in your mind. So I hope they get the relief they need, like my friend Stephen Cochran did, who was a decorated Marine, and he was hurt and now is a better person because of cannabis. If you don't believe me, go back and watch that episode with Stephen Cochran. It'll blow your mind. Sabrina Ferguson, Hal Koopman. Oh, hello, Sabrina. How's Bill doing? Her husband, Bill, had a big operation, and he let me know today he's doing well. And these are other people I met from doing the show. I'm so grateful to have you as associates, acquaintances, and even friends, people who I've met doing the show. Thank you. Tuned in, friend. Learning as we go. I totally respect you sharing what you have brought to us during your health issue and beyond. Thank you. That's very sweet. I appreciate you saying that. You know, my health issue was I have cancer. A lot of people have a lot worse. I got starter cancer, as I call it, non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. It was really, for me and for others, I would hope, relatively easy to recover from. I didn't even have that many symptoms. The doctor said, are you suffering from symptoms? I don't know. What are they? You're tired a lot. Your limbs are swollen. Your eyes are red. You can't sleep. You sleep too much. You know, a little bit of pain. So you're describing booze travel from drinking around the world, not sleeping enough. That's the show I used to do. I wouldn't know if I had cancer or not. I had all those symptoms, but I love doing that show, and I'd do it again in a heartbeat. What a blessing it was. Frank B., I love this show. Thank you, Frank. I'm pretty new. This really hits home, medical marijuana. Love Booze Traveler, big fan. Oh, thank you, Frank. You from Anaheim? That looked like Angel Stadium there on your thing. But thank you for saying that. But this, you know, I really appreciate that. This is not me. Anybody could have done that show. They just would have done it differently. A lot of people came before me and did drinking shows, and they did them so well. The Thirsty Traveler. Of course, Anthony Bourdain had a couple of drinks. Zane Lamprey had a bunch of drinking shows. Did them way better than I ever would. I was just me, curious traveler, an adventurer, no drink expert by any means. I like having drinks, not necessarily like getting hammered, but sometimes you just got to, right? Especially today. Philip, hi, Jack. I just heard some Mary Jane fight. Yes, COVID-19, that is true. I heard some things about CBD and how it helps with corona and symptoms. I will not say it cures it. I cannot make that claim. I would never do that. I would have to have a medical expert on, and we'll do that next Friday. How about that? To answer your medical questions. So make sure you join me next week. But I got something here that people have been asking me that I wanted to let you know about. Speaking of CBD and THC in the news, and I'm going to read it so I don't get it wrong. The question I got, and we got it several times, never got to it. What's the difference between hemp oil and CBD oil? Because hemp-derived CBD is what you should be looking for, but it doesn't mean hemp oil has CBD in it. You get it? So here's the difference, by the way. The composition, well, mostly CBD and CBD oil, but hemp oil contains omega-3s, omega-6 fatty acids, and other nutritional antioxidants. 12 to 18% CBD content in CBD oil. little to none in hemp oil. THC, well, less than 3%. That's what makes it hemp. If it were more than that, it would be so-called marijuana or cannabis. Hemp oil, none. So you have to be careful. I won't go down the whole list, but if you're looking for CBD, make sure it says CBD on the label. And to further add to your confusion, it doesn't mean hemp oil does not have CBD. For a long time, people couldn't put that on the label. The Farm Bill of 2018 changed that, and you could now say it had CBD. But before, you couldn't. So they'd call it hemp oil as a way to get around it, although it did have hemp-derived CBD. So make sure you pay attention, just like anything. And another thing I learned this week, and I wanted to share with you, I know of a woman who started taking CBD and medicinal THC. She got her card from her doctor because in her state, it's only available medicinally. She went into a store, and the salesman was not a good one. Didn't ask her a lot of questions, just said, here, take this. Oh, this hurts, take that. Didn't know the strain. She didn't know the ratio. She didn't know even the milligrams. She was afraid to ask because she didn't want to appear to be ignorant. She walked into the store with a great amount of trepidation, looking both ways because she didn't want to get caught in that store. And she even said that it wasn't the judgment of her friends or family that she feared. It was her had been ingrained into her mind for years and years and years. We have to get over that. There should be no stigma. If it helps you, it's okay. It's only cannabis. That's it. There are a lot of things so much worse. So I learned that people are still afraid. So please ask the salespeople, the bud tenders, whoever you're talking to, ask them for more details and tell them, and don't be afraid to have a conversation as if they were a doctor. Just know they probably don't have medical expertise, but they're pretty good. Most of the ones I talk to knowing about CBD and THC, but don't let them rush you. Just like buying a car or anything else. Ask questions because your happiness as it relates to having pain or not just might depend on it. Susan Stanford. Hi, Jack. Hi, Susan. I love my Friday info sessions. Thank you. Me too. I learn a lot from you guys. I too had cancer 4 years ago. Yay. Not wait a minute. Not yay that you had it. That you wrote had, not have. That's what I'm saying. Yay. I'm sorry. Booze Traveler. Nobody could have done that but you. Not true. And I'm not trying to be, this is no humble brag. It's not false modesty. Anybody could have done that show just differently. That's all. You know, and I appreciate you saying that. It's really nice. Just like when you see a performance of in a movie, you say, I couldn't imagine anyone else playing that part. But until you do, until you see it. And for me, I just love people and the experience that they shared with me, this joy of life that they had sitting down with someone over a cocktail or whatever it is they make, a beer, wine, anything, and sharing their food and their friends and their family with me. I just loved that. And I hope that translated because I really felt it. One of the great compliments I get from the show is that I seem to be the same person in real life as I did on the show. I was an actor and I still am for a long time, but I was not acting on that show ever, I promise. What was that last comment? It's almost show. Let's squeeze in one more. No, Jack, nobody but you. Oh, thank you. That was very nice. We didn't have to do that. You were amazing on Bert's podcast. Yes, the great Bert Kreischer had me on the Bertcast this week. You can look it up on his YouTube or my Facebook or the High Road. Thank you for joining me so much. Here is episode 9 of the High Road. It's Paint and Puff, a fun place in Vegas, and how CBD and THC can help with creativity or at least loosen you up or spur you or inspire you. And then we have the great Bill Smitovich right after that. Stick around. You'll have to click on this, though. Ken, you got that ready? Click on this because this won't roll into it. Right at the top of the hour, which is less than a minute away, there's a thumbnail. It's either on Facebook or YouTube. You'll have to look for it. I don't know that we have it, but it's coming up soon. And by the way, it's there all the time, so you're not going to miss anything. It's not like it's live. But you can catch it, my YouTube channel, my Facebook channel, the High Road YouTube. It's everywhere is what I'm saying. Thanks for joining me. See you soon. Bye.